welcome to the Droid and Dragon Cantina, a podcast highlighting independent science fiction and fantasy authors. Our guest this week is Costi Gurgu. He's a Romanian-born author who moved to Canada to begin his writing career. We talked about his two post-apocalyptic novels from the Corrosion Trilogy, along with his dystopian book Servitude and his award-winning novel RecipeArium. So welcome to the show, Mr. Costi Gurgu.
Thank you, Brandon. It's good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you're welcome. So I can say, where this show is here to talk about science fiction and fantasy authors. So why don't you tell us what you write? What are your biggest projects out there? I know you've got I've already looked and I know you have a variety, but tell us about some of your bigger projects.
Right. Okay. So these must be my novels. I have 4 novels out. The fifth is on its way. It's scheduled for this year. The first novel, my debut novel, it's called RecipeArium, and it's a new weird, or as Robert J. Sawyer put it, the new weird, because it's a little bit beyond that. And then I have Servitude, which is a dystopian thriller. And then I launched the trilogy Corrosion. The first book, Green Corrosion, was launched in 2023. Then last year, Pink Corrosion, the second book in the trilogy. And this year, I will launch Black Corrosion, the third book in the trilogy.
So I guess the easiest thing to do is start at the beginning. So how old were you when you caught the writing bug?
Well, I was pretty young. I was in second grade primary school when I tried first time to write something. I was heavily influenced by Star Wars. So basically it was a Star Wars story. And my literature teacher was impressed, so she encouraged me to continue. But it took me some years to get to my, let's say, original stuff, like stuff that was worth reading. By then I was in high school when I got there, when I got to that level. So we can say that high school is where I started writing seriously.
I'm sure anyone past a certain age, like Star Wars, it seems to be the gateway drug to science fiction for a lot of us.
Yeah.
So what were some of those other influences? I'm sure you kind of branched out from Star Wars at a certain point.
Oh yes. So first of all, I discovered H.G. Wells, which was a tremendous influence. I mean, I was fascinated with time travel because of him, and with other stuff, and I went through him pretty quickly, and then I discovered a French author, Gerard Klein. I read the first novel I read was Les Seigneurs de la Guerre, The Warlords, I think is translated in English, which is again time travel, but a different sort of time travel. And that basically encouraged me to actually start writing more seriously. We were discussing, me and my friends at that age. I was in the 6th grade or 7th grade. We were discussing it, and it was such a delight. I've read it several times since then, and at every age it reads differently. And then I discovered Van Vogt, and Jules Verne was back with H.G. Wells, so that was among the first readings. And in university, I discovered, China Miéville from England, Terry Pratchett. Terry Pratchett has become a big influence. Whenever I'm stuck, I just turn to Terry Pratchett because his writing is so cathartic. It's exactly what I need to basically get unstuck.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that are I think Terry Pratchett's one of their kind of go-tos. He seems to be that guy that like he's just always out there. Sooner or later, if you're having a discussion about sci-fi, especially kind of like in the modern age, you're going to run into Terry Pratchett somewhere out there.
Yeah.
You already clicked like Verne and Wells, obviously like two of the big ones. I feel like one is just a hop, skip, and a jump from one to the other. You know, 'cause I guess they were, you know, kind of in a similar time frame, you know, and kind of like these guys were kind of like the Titans or kind of like the early kind of architects of, you know, modern sci-fi.
Yeah. And also, originally I'm from Romania, so there are a lot of Romanian writers who influenced me, who I discovered in early days. But I presume that their names don't mean much for your audience. Or maybe just Sassarman. He was translated by Ursula K. Le Guin. The Circle Quadrant or something like that. It was a translation of his book, his major book, because he has several. Yeah.
So at what point did you, I guess, immigrate to Canada?
About 20 years ago. I just finished one part of my career. As a career, I was an art director. I worked for magazines like Playboy magazine, the French fashion magazine Madame Figaro, Taboo, which is a women lifestyle magazine, and so on. So I created several magazines, and at one point I felt that I need to focus on my writing career, and I should take it across the ocean. So I just came to Canada to do that.
So when you got here, was that when you got like, I know, I don't want to say serious about writing, was where you start? I guess, I think at some point, I think with a lot of writers, that comes from being where you're kind of writing more of it, I guess, more thinking of it as a hobby to where you start thinking of it as a profession. Would you kind of agree with that attitude or that assessment?
Definitely. Yeah, it's the time I started writing novels, less and less short fiction. For the first 10 years here, I still wrote short fiction because that I was used to that, and that came easier to me. But then I started leaning heavily on novels, and studying on the differences between how you write them here to how you write them across the ocean in Europe. And again, in Europe is different of how they write them in England versus continental Europe. So it was a research that took me years, but it was worth studying all the differences. And
so how would you characterize those differences? As someone like myself who's only used to kind of reading sci-fi in English, how would you characterize the difference between, say, like French sci-fi or like Eastern European sci-fi and American sci-fi?
It's a sci-fi in Eastern Europe and in Europe in general. It's a sci-fi focused mainly on character and idea, and less on story. So they don't tend to plan as much the story. They just tend to get an idea, develop the characters, and then start writing and see where the characters take them. Versus here, where story is very important. I mean, characters are also very, very important, but story is more important than in Europe, and a lot of writers are focusing on planning the story, on planning the character's journey through the story, which may not seem much, but in theory, but in practice, it's a lot of difference. It's you can feel that when you're reading with that in mind, with getting the differences.
It sounds like in America, or at least maybe by extension, like some place like English speaking parts of the world, like where it's maybe like we're doing it more in mind with like a franchise? Would that be a good way to characterize it there? It's like you kind of feel like everything is a setup for something else.
Yes, you could say that. I mean, there's a lot of variety, and there's a lot of styles and voices here. It's not that it's not a recipe. It's just that story is stronger here, while ideas are stronger there. Let's say, yeah.
Interesting. So, going to your Corrosion trilogy, let's what inspired that, or what kind of led you into that story?
Right. So that's actually that started quite a while ago in university. I was approached by National Geographic from Romania to write an ecological short story, and studying what I could write about, I discovered an article about two Austrian scientists doing experiments with water and discovering a state that normally water is not in it. I mean, they created it in lab, and I think they could maintain it for about 15 minutes or something like that. The gel state. Mm. So not liquid, not solid, not other state. It's the gel state, and it has. They discovered it has some peculiar qualities. So I extrapolated from there. I love the idea, and I extrapolated from there, and I created a dystopian world where we basically lose one of the main means of humanity survival: water. Water is there's a global ecological disaster, and water becomes gel, and it has new properties, and it influences people the most. The strongest influence being that it corrodes flesh. Mm. So we become rusty, we become corroded like ordinary metal.
Yeah, could you describe it like and this is just in your notes for the description, a word that I can barely pronounce, but I looked it up, and it's basically like you get that kind of greenish blue copper, like oxidized copper color to your skin.
Like verdigris, yeah.
Yeah, verdigris. Yeah, like trying to like was like, yeah, it's I actually had to look the word up. So, kudos to you on that for introducing me to a new word. But like, yeah, the substance of it, like it's the whole ecological thing. Like that's become something I think it's become more and more popular in recent years. I mean, I know Frank Herbert did Dune back in the 50s, right? So like he was the first guy to get the whole ecological thing out there, or like one of the first big ones. I mean, you can see traces of it all over in other stories, but I feel like especially like in recent years, that's becoming more like the ecological disaster seems to be a theme that seems to have caught on more and more so, like, and especially like I want to say for like the last 20 years that I can think of, to where like suddenly it's you kind of start see it popping up everywhere.
Because we've seen some of the effects, like bigger storms, and more widely spread than they were before, and drought, and unusual winters, unusual summers, unusual hot summers with unusual cold winters.
Oh yeah. Well, even like here in America, we had a hurricane that got all the way up into the North Carolina mountains, which traditionally was a place you went to get away from that kind of weather. The idea of a hurricane hitting in the mountains, if you had said that 20 years ago, we'd all just be like, "Nah, man, you're crazy. That'll never happen." And now it happened, and it was awful. So like suddenly now people are having to think of these like, oh God, this suddenly like you're having to prepare for weather that people never thought was possible.
Exactly. They have them now in Europe, and they didn't used to have that. So it's all over the world. It's not just locally. So basically, I think that we're becoming aware that, and that's one of the ideas of the book, that um, corporation greed and egotistical views drive us to think that money can save us from any situation we're in. But nature doesn't care about money. It's, it can turn on us just like that without caring how rich or how poor we are or where we live or things like that. So we have to start taking care of this aspect, because we're still salvageable. We're not over the edge, but, well, you never know. I mean, we had ice ages and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, that's the comic George Carlin used to as point out. It's like the Earth will be fine eventually after it gets rid of us. It'll do its thing and get back to normal. But like, so when you're talking about saving the planet, you're really talking about saving people.
Saving people, yeah.
Right. It's like everybody because that's such a big abstract concept. I feel like more people's like, no, let's save us. Like the Earth will, it is. We're like a momentary blip on this big rock.
Exactly.
And it was just
us. It will recover.
Right.
Yeah.
It'll take a while, but eventually, it'll kind of shake us off, and then do something else. And,
it's just about getting to a balance that will keep us alive, long enough that we can go in, to colonize other planets, and then not being on the brink of extinction. Because here, if it happens tomorrow, then that's it. It's everybody's here.
Yeah, that's another big theme is getting humans off planet. And we have a guy out there now who's talking about occupy Mars, which is a nice idea, but we're nowhere close to that.
No. Yeah,
by any stretch of the imagination.
You would have said that like 50 years ago, that in the 2000s we would be there already, but
yeah. Well, yeah, we're supposed to already have flying cars according to the Jetsons, and and now it's like you're starting to see like beginnings of flying cars. Then again, seeing the way most people drive on land, I don't know if I want them airborne, because that's even scarier. But
and traffic jams in the air, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you have more room for them to go, but I think that's the double-edged sword. Right now, the bad drivers aren't limited to just where the road is taking them. They can go all over, and then
yeah, that's terrifying to think of.
Yeah, the idea. Trust me, I live in Atlanta, so like if the idea of some of these people trying to drive through areas where there are skyscrapers is enough to induce nightmares.
It is, yeah.
So
if you think of it seriously, yeah.
Yeah, I noticed like also the books. It seems like there's also the themes of like the whole tyrannical government, which seems like it's like another common trope of sci-fi, because it's also like a thing we have to deal with in real life.
Yeah. I mean, we've already dealt like several times, so people have experience with that in other parts of the world, not here.
Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah.
We haven't quite fully gotten there, but there's some troubling signs.
Yeah. Anyway, but the thing is that I wrote the short story Corrosion. It was called Corrosion, and they published it, and then I resold it like I think 6 or 7 times. Mm-hmm. It got some awards. I mean, it was a huge success for me. And then one big name in Romania, he had this theory that only the first piece, the original, is actually good, worth of something, and the part 2 and part 3, and if you come up with sequels, then they're not as good or even bad. And then I took a bet with him and wrote a second short story, Pink Corrosion, which again got some awards and was published several times, and I proved him wrong. Of course, he said that, well, it's a different story. Well, it's the same universe, it's the same world. So, yeah, the same character. So that can be, is debatable.
So what is your, what was your process for, because like nowadays, it's never like if you make one good thing, they want you to make at least, usually like everybody wants the trilogy, right? And where there's movies, books, or
Yeah.
whatever. Like everybody one is never enough, right? So how do you go about trying to, I guess, up the ante or improve upon what you already have out there?
So, well, the thing is, this is my first trilogy. I've tried it because I already had materials for 2 books, the Corrosion, which became Green Corrosion, and the Pink Corrosion, which stayed Pink Corrosion. And the idea is that you are starting the first book with a certain premise, with a certain theme, and so on, and you develop that, and you develop the characters to a certain point. The story goes to a certain point, and then comes the second book and the third book. And if the second and third book just beat the same drum on the exactly same idea, just a little bit forward in time, with no character growth and no new ideas and a new premise, then it will be just a mediocre try on your part. So you have to come up with new ideas and basically elevate from where the point you've reached in your first book, to elevate with a new premise, with maybe several new ideas to the next level, and then with the third book to the next level. And that's how you actually try to keep them fresh and hope that you succeed in that. And from that point of view, yes, you can say yes, but they're different now because you came up with new ideas, new premises. But it's basically the same world that you built. You're just building upon it. You have the basis. You have the whole layout that you already built, and you just add on top of it, taking into account what you already have there, not forgetting about it, not building something completely new, but building on top of it.
Yeah, a certain writer one time was talking about, like, he's talking about other writers. Like I said, the thing was, it's like certain writers, it's like watching someone at a poker table, but they never want to up the bet. And it feels like the good writers always find a way to, again, to put a few more chips on the table to kind of raise the stakes, kind of flip something around, where you get, where your hero is the hero in this book, and then maybe in the next book they're not quite as much the hero, or now maybe they're the antagonist, and you're playing with those different ideas.
Yeah.
Or you have to learn something that now you kind of see everything differently.
Exactly. You can turn the things with your characters, with your storytelling, with your world building, with your basic ideas that you can add to. So you have many ways of doing that. It shouldn't be just another adventure in the same world, same status quo.
Yeah, it's kind of, not necessarily just going further down the same road, but at some point they have to take a turn, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So tell us, you also mentioned your story, Servitude. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, that's threatening to become a reality these days. The thing is that I graduated from law back in Romania, and I loved being in the university and studying law. It's amazing. It's beautiful. I just hated practicing it. But one thing that I loved, one of the disciplines, was like Roman law. And in Roman law, they had an institution which was slavery. And slavery was not just you go to war, you take some prisoners, and they become slaves. A Roman citizen could become a slave as well if he is indebted. So basically, they found a way to solve debt problems. If you don't have any more money to pay your debt, then you just become a slave for a limited time period and work away your debt. And that basically that spread to slaves that came from prisoners of war. So in other civilizations, if you got to be a slave because you're a prisoner of war, you would stay like that forever, all your life, and maybe even your children in some of the civilizations. Romans said, no, you can pay off your debt and become a free citizen, even if you're a prisoner of war. So that for me was extraordinary, that they actually thought of a way in that period of time. 2,000 years ago, they thought of a way to actually get rid of slavery. Not completely, they didn't forbid slavery because it was ingrained in the culture. It wasn't something that they would think of, but you can pay off your debt and you can become again a free citizen. So I thought, okay, what if in modern times we get back to that? Because the corporations are becoming greedier and greedier and more powerful. Basically, they have money more than a lot of other countries. They have more power than most of the countries. So what if they can get that power to actually take people into a sort of slavery to pay off their debts? What countries would go there first? What countries would fight against it? And I don't know, maybe win, maybe lose, or what would be the dynamic in the world, and how would we go there? What would be the pre-existing political and social conditions to get there? And that's servitude in a nutshell. I mean, servitude it starts at a point where Europe is already legalizing debt servitude, and in the States they're still fighting against it, but they're losing the battle. So it's just the story of a New York detective trying to fight against it, and to save his family, because he's indebted like most of us are. And times are tough, so you can never know when you're the next victim of servitude.
Yeah, and it's with like I'm sure the geopolitical angle is something that's I'm sure, if not fun to explore, definitely like good for like a thought experiment, because that's usually when it comes to like the economics of it all, there's always that kind of domino effect, right? Whereas once one person's doing it, now if another, like say they're whoever their competitor is, now if like they're getting like free labor, now the other person's got to, compete with that. So then they do it, and then on
exactly.
and on.
And it's a question of rhetoric. I mean, how would you present that idea and sound humane and sound like, oh, it's a good thing, it's not a bad thing. It's not what you know of slavery. This is a
nice slavery. Not the...
Yeah. I mean, it's just a thing of rhetoric. So how is the way you put it that counts to actually fool the masses and get them to approve of your approach.
Never underestimate the power of good marketing.
Exactly.
You can sell a lot of bad ideas if you know how to market them the right way.
Exactly.
As we've seen, there's no shortage of examples of that in history, sadly.
Yeah.
You look back at that and go, why would they ever do such a thing? And it turns out there was just some guy who was really good at convincing people, no, this is the way we should go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I know that in retrospective, you think of most of these ideas like, how could you be that stupid to actually accept that? But in that moment, there were a lot of people who accepted easily. All these ideas, these crazy ideas, are in the beginning accepted easily, and then maybe after a time, they start thinking about them. And that's that.
Catch people when they're desperate or when they're down on their luck, and then suddenly you can start convincing people of all sorts of things.
Exactly. Yeah.
Somebody steps up and says, I got the answer. And, what do you want to do? And like, well, that's a little crazy, but maybe, we're kind of bad off. Let's give it a shot. And then off they go.
I'll give you free house, free meals. You just work to pay off your debts, and that's it.
See, like when you put it like that, there you know, it's so people like, well, I'm already like, you know, you hear people use the term like wage slave right now, and it'll be like, somebody would be like, well, I'm already doing this thing anyway, so
yeah.
It's I get how do you sell that idea, and it's scary because people have done it throughout history to convince people to do all sorts of bad things just because like, okay, no, here's this thing we need to do to get behind it. Then trouble comes up. Well, no, go do this or go do that. And I think once you get people far enough down a certain rabbit hole, you know, they can't see the, they lose track of the warning signs.
Yeah.
And, you know, you get all the, you know, the stuff that makes books good and that makes life bad.
Yeah, I hope nobody, you know, takes the idea, but I'm afraid.
It's excuse me, it's like, but you think like how much of science fiction is just like are like cautionary tales, right?
Exactly.
And then you get people saying, "Oh, no, that sounds really cool," and you're like, "Wait, what? Did you read the same book that I read?"
Yeah.
It's crazy. But I mean, I guess that's why you do it. Unfortunately, you don't always know how your idea is going to be, you know. Yeah. What's going to happen to the idea once you let it loose into the world?
Yeah, I just hope it will make, you know, more good than bad, but you never know. Yeah.
Yeah. It's you know, it's funny. Like someone was there was a meme out there now that they were saying like some people, they don't want Star Trek, they want Dune, and some people's like, well, Dune was an awesome movie. It's like, did you like? It's not if you were actually living in that. No, yeah. You were watching the very very rich people, and they were still having a hard time. Imagine what the poor people were, were going through. So there's only going to be like one duke or one baron per like whatever area you're in, and then there's going to be all the rest of us out there grinding, you know, or getting ground. It's, you know, it doesn't. It's just like you got to think it through. So so talk about, because you mentioned some other couple of stories. Like what are one of the other ones you want to discuss or tell the people about?
Right. So it's my debut novel. It's RecipeArium. That one I wrote again in university, and it was an experiment for me if I could write a story where there are no humans, only other beings, you know, like sort of aliens, from an alien point of view. So there are no humans. Could I create that kind and make it valid and make it understandable to people? And I wrote RecipeArium. And I sent it to there was this big publishing house back in Romania, Nemira it was called, and they had this yearly contest for non-published novels, the best non-published novel, and I sent it to the competition and I won the award. So I said, okay, then I knew that part of the award was to get published by them. So I was happy. I was like, yay, my first, the first novel I write, and it's already on the market. And then they told me that that actually the jury gave me the award, not them, and they read it and they don't know how to market it. They haven't read anything like that before. They don't know what to say about it, and if it will sell or not, they don't know anything about it. So basically they didn't publish it, and I waited for, I think, 7 years to get a publisher brave enough back in Romania to publish it. And then I came with that novel here. I translated it. It didn't work so good, and I rewrote it in English because the straightforward translation didn't work exactly as it should be. I rewrote it in English, and then I sent it to publishing houses here for another 7-8 years until I got a publisher that said, yes, we want this novel. It's amazing. We want it. We don't know how to market it, but we think it's awesome. So White House Publications in Detroit. And they published it in, I think, 2015. And that was what Robert J. Sawyer called the new weird, because usually new weird has a human in it, has a human point of view, while this doesn't have that. It's beyond that point, but it's set in a secondary world. It's not on Earth, and with these crazy beings, the thrills that live in an organism. They live in a monster, inside a monster.
So how do you go about establishing all that? Because I mean, that's kind of there's always the world building aspect of science fiction, but you obviously we're all coming from how do you get outside the human perspective to try and make something that looks kind of alien, but still recognizable enough to where people are going to, empathize with it?
So the thing is that these aliens have a completely different biology and chemistry and all that stuff, and they have different biological urges and needs, and but emotionally they're very close to humans. So that's how, yes, they behave strangely, and yes, their world it's a strange world, living inside an organism, living inside a monster. It's inside the Leviathan. It's quite odd. It's quite weird comparing to where we live and what we have here. But then the characters, from a certain point, behave like humans. So if you go beyond their needs and beyond their lifestyles and lifestyle choices and all that stuff, they have the same emotional needs that we have. They have the same emotional urges that we have. So that's understandable from a human point of view. You can, starting from there, you can understand their motivations, and you can understand what they're talking about and why are they doing different things, the things they're doing.
Well, cool, man. Thanks for coming by. Tell the people where they can find you online if they want to hit you up or check out your stuff.
Right. So yes. So I have a website, CostiGurgu.com. So it's my name in one word.com. And I'm on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, I'm trying to remember because I just joined that one. It's Blue something.
Blue Sky.
Blue Sky. Yes, that's the one. Thank you.
I know they're popping up all over the place these days.
Yeah. I just saw a lot of of my friends joining, so I said, okay, let's try it. So I'm on all these platforms. I'm with my name, Costi Gurgu.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for coming out, and we'll see you out there.
Thank you so much for having me.
That will be all for this episode. This podcast has been a Corcutta Media production. To learn more about this show or other podcasts, visit corcuttamedia.com/podcasts or follow us on social media @Corcutta Media. This recording or any portion thereof may not be reproduced or used in any manner whatsoever without the express written permission of the publisher, except for use of brief quotations in a review. Copyright 2025 by Corcutta Media. All rights reserved.